This is a clouds weather alert.
Good late Tuesday, early Wednesday meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now tracking Hurricane Francine as it tries to organize here, and it is getting stronger as it's getting a little bit closer here toward eventually making landfall later on that Wednesday in toward parts of Louisiana. So a hurricane warning effect there for areas like Baton Rouge, also over toward Morgan City and Houma. So need folks to really, wrap up their preparations here as we look ahead, as we're getting there. You have maybe just a little bit more time in the morning hours, but I know it's going to be squally weather that's coming on through as we're looking at things. Let's go ahead and kind of pause the infrared satellite. You see the thunderstorm activity seemingly trying to get better organized here closer toward the center. You see those colder cloud tops are telling that weather story. And as I go on over the radar, there is some of the accent here out ahead. You can kind of see it on the Doppler technology. I know it's going to get more concentrated as we look ahead. I know that one there on the coast is anticipating a landfall somewhere around 7 o'clock or so Central Time on that Wednesday there. So something to kind of keep an eye on here as we're looking at the situation, as we're monitoring things very carefully. Definitely something to make note of here as we're kind of tracking the overall setup with Hurricane Francine. We're in alert mode here. We're tracking this very carefully as we'll go ahead right now and go on over toward a wind forecast here as we look ahead. You see in the Gulf there, 7 a.m. Central Time on that Wednesday. Still, the worst of the winds this offshore is the anticipation, but as you see here, by about 7 p.m. Central Time, onshore with that landfall, and you can see here Morgan City getting some of the worst of this on this projection, but we could see some shifts of this toward the east. We'll have to watch areas like Houma could shift over that way, and then it maybe puts areas like Hammond further in the path. And right now it's looking like more Morgan City to Baton Rouge could get the very worst of this. I mean, some of these smaller cities in between, be getting this as well as we kind of look here on the Doppler, our technology here. I mean, but if it shifts a little further over, you have New Orleans there potentially, in the path here. I know this one model actually is, as you see these D's, that's from maybe a wrapping back around later, but as we kind of zoom out, the models right now are in pretty good agreement. Maybe a touch bit east, though, is where this will end up shifting. I know some of the other models that we don't see on this do have it going a little bit further off toward the east, and that is a distinct possibility. And a hurricane warning could ultimately be needed for New Orleans proper. There's no hurricane warning currently for New Orleans, but that could change in a hurry. I mean, a hurricane watching plan is expected to make landfall here as we're looking in under about 18 hours or so at this point. So definitely worth touching on here. Very, very much so as we track. I know 90-mile-an-hour hurricane expected there at that landfall point. It could be a little higher, a little lower. It could get to a Cat 2 before it makes landfall. We shall see. And then a 50-mile-an-hour hurricane as this impacts here around Jackson, Mississippi there late on that Wednesday and into early Thursday especially. I mean, we're talking about the overnight hours to some degree with that. So you can see the track going further north, but we're going to have some local impacts here as well. I know right now we don't have too much rain on the Doppler locally as we see some in Nassau County. We look real carefully around St. Mary's there. And that's up into toward Camden County, Georgia. You see some of these areas about 3/4 of an inch in the last hour, something like that, but nothing just completely overwhelming. Again, we'll track all that over the last 12 hours. Some areas had a good amount of rain as we're looking 2-3 inches there, close toward the south, maybe of American Beach. But I know this is not from Francine, but we are going to have some influence from Francine on our weather here as we do look ahead. So again, you can see here, again, Morgan City right now, the expectations are not as bad as we were thinking earlier on toward Lafayette, Louisiana, but definitely an impact in toward central Louisiana. And some of that impact to be felt in southeast Louisiana. I mean, even Mobile, tropical storm warning, some tornado risk there. Could be pretty substantial. That could be realized in that area as we look ahead And even towards some more western zones here, we could have a tornado watch in play as we look ahead, especially into Thursday here. So make sure you have multiple ways to get alerts as we kind of go ahead right now and see those current temperatures. I'll throw those up here. You can see mid 70s in a lot of spots, some spots a little closer to 80, or in case of the observation toward Jacksonville and the sensor there at Mayport, they're at 82 degrees. But as you look toward the Gulf Coast, it is warm out there. Definitely some higher dew point values telling that story as well. We'll have to see how much instability there is as we look ahead and toward the timeline. We'll be continuing to track everything here in that regard, and just try to give you the very latest here. Just try to keep you informed here as it is needed. We won't have a formal update late Thursday, so we're going to really be focused, on the storm system, and maybe having to do special coverage Thursday here as well, not just landfall coverage that we'll do on the different platforms here for Francine, but maybe, tornado coverage for some of our counties will be needed for seeing a tornado warning across any of our 62 counties. We're always on to give you the latest to protect you, your friends, and your family. So I've done that for almost 5 years now, so make sure you're tuning in. I'll be on for the landfall coverage here later on Wednesday on the different platforms. So let me just remind you of those real quick. Facebook there, KC Cloud Reacts, Cloud Weather. Twitter/X there at Cloud KC. YouTube at Cloud Weather. Cloud Weather there on Twitch, and then cloudweather.com. So again, landfall covered there, and then also as needed, whenever there's a tornado warning within any of our 62 counties, we'll be on here, and I suspect we'll have some in our western counties, despite just making landfall, nearer to western New Orleans, and it's not, necessarily the core that's going, maybe as far east as Sally did, for instance. Still, the way we're gonna have some dry air potentially wrapping in here could be problematic. So we gotta just be staying aware of that possibility. We're in alert mode for the landfall west end for that local concern here. They go toward the graphics right now. I know we're just continuing to track this system. Could have some more tropical trouble toward the Carolinas early next week. We shall see on that. Just have to stay tuned for the very latest as we kind of look ahead there in toward the timeline. We'll monitor that for you here, obviously. But again, no formal update late Thursday, but I'm going to be on here on that Wednesday here for the landfall and as needed for the tornado coverage, whether it's late Wednesday, Thursday, or maybe even lingering into early Friday. That's not out of the question. We'll monitor things a little uncertain. Maybe we get some instability on Friday, way on the backside, but by then the lower pressures will be kind of moving further away. As we just got a new update on Francine. So let me see what the numbers are saying. Let me see what the Hurricane Center in Miami's telling us here. Now they've had some aircraft out there doing some investigations here on the storm system to try to get an idea of just how strong Francine is, and they sent out a special update around 11:20 Eastern, 10:20 Central there on how Francine was behaving, and that the winds went from 75 to 85 miles an hour, and now the newest update here has the winds to 90 miles an hour and the pressure down to 977 millibars. So moving northeast at about 10 miles an hour, it would seem. So now a 90 mile an hour hurricane. So that's the 2 a.m. update per se, 1 a.m. Central Time update from the Hurricane Center in Miami. So let's throw up the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale here real quick. I'll move away from the graphics for a second. You'll be able to see here if we get a storm, winds to technically be 100. Then that would make that a Cat 2 at landfall, and it's up to 90 already. Went from 75 there just a few hours ago, and then right after having to go to 85. I know it probably was closer to 85, even at 11 Eastern, 10 Central. It took a little bit for the update, to be written there in the advisory. But again, let's just kind of continue to watch things here as the situation does transpire. We're just trying to let you know exactly what's going on here with this scenario. So I know we're very cognizant of what's going on here with a strengthening hurricane. Now, if it gets really strong compared to what we're forecasting, I'm talking about maybe bordering close to Cat 3. which isn't completely out of the realm of possibility since it's starting to get its act together, something that could, as we're looking there, make things a little bit more concentrated with the damage earlier on. It still get drier in it and weaken, maybe, increase the tornado threat, but it might take a little bit longer for that to happen. I know we saw that with Michael. It took a little longer for it to really unwind. This isn't going to be Michael, but still, I got to be careful here since it is starting to show some, more rapid type of intensification to some degree. Not the official definition being met, but as we're looking at things necessarily here, I know it gets kind of tricky here with that. I mean, as we kind of monitor the scenario, I know we always want to make sure we're watching things very carefully with that. I mean, as we kind of look at the scenario here, we're definitely going to be tracking Francine in the Weather Center and try to give you the latest on all that. So, again, we're just trying to continue to let you know what's going on here. I'm just double checking some definitions here of a rapidly intensifying hurricane. So it has to increase by about 35 miles an hour in a 24-hour period, and it hadn't done that yet. I know we were looking at 65 miles an hour for a while before it's gone up to 90, but it would have to go up another 10 miles an hour here for it to be considered a rapid intensification within a certain time frame. So just kind of bear that in mind here as we're looking at things. So that's kind of the information there on this. We would rather it be a weakening hurricane on landfall. It may weaken some as it gets closer to the coast. We'll see. Some models have indicated that here, but if that doesn't happen, I know you'll really get those winds down toward the surface. I mean, this didn't even become a hurricane to 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern, so we're hoping things might work out a little bit better. But now it's looking like it is really starting to get its act together as we look here at the very latest. I know in terms of that 1 a.m. number now, 90 mile an hour winds. That's what we're dealing with here from the Hurricane Center in Miami. So this hurricane warning, the latest update there earlier on included, and it shouldn't have changed, but Baton Rouge, Houma, and Morgan City. That's in the red color. The pink with the lines through it. That's a hurricane watch that includes New Orleans. Tropical storm warning in the dark blue there. That includes areas like Gulfport there, Mississippi. And you also have Mobile, Alabama in that. And the tropical storm watch gets further up there into parts of Mississippi, especially. That's in the yellow color. So breaking that all down for you there. And we'll go ahead and just continue to track all this storm surge threat from Francine. This is a full advisory. They don't normally change these in the intermediate updates here, but Vermilion Bay, 5 to 10 feet of storm surge. It looks like areas from the Vermilion, Cameron, Paris line to about Port Francine there, about 5 to 10 feet of storm surge expected. 4 to 7 feet there from Port Francine to the mouth of the Mississippi River, and you see some areas further off, 3 to 5 feet, 2 to 4 feet. Have to be mindful of that, of course, and even some coastal flooding, possible closer, and or the Florida Panhandle. I mean, even Panama City could have some of that, even though I don't really show up on this, but it won't be, just overwhelming or anything like that, but still noteworthy potentially at that recurrent risk as well. So just have to be mindful, as I know these tips are mainly for our friends out west, and except for the tornado threat really, and of course there's sometimes flooding with, just this pattern in general, but besides the tornado threat, this is geared to folks, a lot further west of our area, but secure property and decide whether evacuation is necessary. Life-threatening storm surge is certain across parts of that zone. That's an area that's already very vulnerable there as we look toward Louisiana, so I know you don't have much time at this point to decide whether evacuation is needed. I mean, as you're waking up in the morning, that might be about your last chance to get out. And I mean, even then, already some of those values, as this gets closer here, you could already start to see some concern there with the winds going up and the like as things start to deteriorate. But you should have a little window early on. But it's gonna start getting rougher here as we look through the day. in some of those areas there, like Morgan City, Home, Baton Rouge. I know some areas of Louisiana, even some evacuations have been ordered. So make sure you're following the local guidance on mandatory evacuations. As you're looking toward the local parishes there. It's going to, kind of vary, but a basic disaster supplies kit includes a water, non-perishable food, battery-powered or hand-crank radio, and NOAA weather radio, flashlight, and first aid kit. And it's also important to have cash and also gas there, and then that full list available ready.gov/kit. As we're looking at things, I know, ironic having to deal with stuff on, what it is, September 11th here. I know it's such a terrible day, in the country 23 years ago, but it's also been an active day in terms of tropical cyclones, which I'll get to here in a few minutes. Of course, just have to be ready to move to an interior room for these folks out west in a tornadic situation. And then after a storm moves through, staying away from power lines, and also generator safety is critical. So, gotta be really careful here as we're looking at things. I mean, that tornado safety tip kind of applies to folks out, there in the Gulf Coast region, but also some of our counties as well. As I see, the latest SBC outlooks are just coming in here, like right now. So that's important. I may need to go ahead and let me just keep this graphic up for a second. I want to investigate things. We already have a graphic in here for the tornado risk here as we kind of look at things, but I just want to see what they came up with. Unless there's some dramatic change, I'm not going to probably shift our graphic around here at this point. That I have here, but it does seem they've extended the tornado risk further off toward the east. So let's go ahead here, and I'm just going to kind of look to see what they put out. Just bear with me here. I just want to see what they have, but unless there's some dramatic change in philosophy that I'm not expecting, I'm not really planning on shifting our graphic. And yeah, it's actually going along pretty well with what I have. So we'll get to that graphic here in just a second, but let me go ahead and kind of see that rainfall forecast. You can see here as we look toward the Big Bend region, some areas 3, 4, 5 inches of rain. Not out of the question. You see around Apalachicola maybe. That'd be the greatest risk there of some maybe rotation with storms. I know you see a little bit of rain, enhancement there with the totals toward the first coast as well. But then, of course, the path of Francine, the core of it, is well delineated here really as we look towards central Louisiana, some in southeast Louisiana, then in southern and even central Mississippi, northern Mississippi, western Tennessee. I mean, even in the heartland, you have southeast Missouri, southern Illinois, western Kentucky getting totals that are, they're not as high, but some of these areas, in some cases, have a little bit easier time of flooding because they're not as used to tropical downpours like this. As I know, you can go to carter.com/radar for an interactive look at things, whether we're on the air or off the air with coverage of Francine. And then here's the graphic. I came up with this here before we had the SBC changes. I mean, and honestly, I'm looking at the broad brush of it, but honestly, it's kind of pretty in line with what I have here for that Thursday. Isolated tornadoes possible. Uncertainty does remain, but subject to change here a little bit. And I was really kind of diving in on this because the thing is, I know you're going to have multiple ways to receive alerts, and some of the models have been, ARRR is really even putting this stuff further over to the east, but it's, not out of the question we could get a tornado in like north central Florida, northeast Florida, southeast Georgia. It's just the overall pressure pattern maybe not as favorable as no pressure getting further away as that activity that remains kind of tries to get east and maybe somewhat north here with the squall line activity and the storm action that kind of develops in between. So instability be a factor too. I know that's something we got to watch for, maybe closer to the Gulf water there. Sometimes you can have more favorable instability. So kind of try to go along with that. There is officially now, and this is just something, again, this is not an official forecast, but it goes in line pretty well with what the official forecast is now. I know there is a slight risk, a 2 out of 5 risk for Tallahassee now, and a 1 out of 5 risk as we get further off toward the east. I kind of see they do have it a little bit more. I mean, the track of this is going to be more north, and I already turned it a little bit further west just based on how the instability pattern might be and this the pressure pattern as things kind of move around, and they've actually have it a little bit more tilted even more off toward with that angle instead of, it kind of been in Northwest. They haven't really been in further west. You don't have as many of those Georgia counties included. So that's something to kind of bear in mind here as we're looking at things here, as we're monitoring this scenario. And really Apalachicola and parts of that county where Franklin County, lies is where Apalachicola is, and then you have Liberty County, McCullough. Those are really the areas before 8 a.m. On Thursday. That's where the focus will be. And then after that period, as we get later on, and that risk kind of spreads here further off. So again, gotta be mindful here of this. I'm just gonna kind of check some things here. Let me kind of see what we have. I'm just trying to see because I don't want to be in it. It doesn't look like I am too far away from what SPC came up with here for that Thursday. Again, this is what I kind of made here based on what I was looking at with the models earlier on, and they have, the slight risk, it kind of bends back a little bit more, where a tornado watch to be more likely, but a marginal 1 out of 5 risk is, very close to what we have. I mean, where we have the delineation, quite honestly, they don't have it quite really as much, maybe like in some of these counties a little further east, but it's not too far off, quite honestly, here as we're looking. So again, tropical climatology does show that this is a favorable time of year for tropical cyclones. I mean, we talked about it or alluded to it, that we've had multiple in history. And I mean, you look at Dora 60 years ago. I know it was the only hurricane to make landfall on the northeast Florida coast during the 20th century. That was on September 10th there, 1964, about 12:20 a.m. And we haven't had one in the 21st century yet either on the first coast. You're directly making landfall there along that Atlantic coast. So that's a crazy stat, really. I mean, we honestly got close with 2012 barrel, believe it or not. But I mean, there haven't been none, going back from 1900 through so far 2024, cross our fingers, other than Dora. So that's a crazy stat. And of course, I know we talk about this here, a lot over the years if you've watched, but of course, a legendary WJXT, late WJXT meteorologist there, George Winterland, he was on top of this here, that shift in track. He was looking at pressure patterns and seeing how things are looking more serious, and he gave that warning for the viewers on the first coast back in 1964 that Dora was coming this way, it would seem, and folks had more time to prepare and protect property and life because of that. I know he had such a legendary career and passed away last year at the age of 91. Just a great career, George Winterland, on TV there, protecting people for so many years. The late WJXT chief meteorologist, George Winterland. This was the defining event, I always say, of his career. But after that, folks were watching his forecast. I mean, up until the day, I mean, that he wasn't a hurricane expert anymore there, as he retired from that eventually. I mean, folks were focused on his forecast here to guide the first coast through so many events. As we go ahead and look here, I know Irma, today is the day. 7 years ago, that made it within 50 miles of Stark. What a night that was about this time 7 years ago. It wasn't as impactful as Dora here in our area, but it was still, I mean, you see 1968, Gladys there. But besides that storm, I mean, there have been 18 hurricanes that tracked within 50 miles of Stark, according to records. A lot of those earlier on. I mean, honestly, there's a lot in there. I mean, I haven't really researched them, but you never know. It's possible some of that stuff could be a little bit, lacking some of the data we have today, and it has might have not been quite as strong as this would suggest, but still a lot of storms that were impactful going back. I mean, and it's about a 100-year stretch there from, as we're looking in the 1800s to 1964, so where there would be records, and you see there's 15 other hurricanes that came through according to this here from NOAA. I know one of them was very severe, and it was worse than Dora here, the word like Stark and the like. In 1896, you see that coming right on through. That was a very significant one. But Dora, you can see that coming in from the east, a very odd track. All these others really coming in here in general in the last, many decades coming in from the Gulf Coast there. I mean, even that one in 1896, that was even, stronger than the others, as you can tell by the color table there. I mean, that came from the Gulf. Looks like one in 1926, maybe from the east. But in general, these were not coming that direction. But Dora did. What a memorable event. My mom even remembers that there. Old Hampton Elementary, I've been, very young and riding out that storm then. It was a very memorable event. And that was 60 years ago yesterday. Arma was 7 years ago today. If you see Arma, that path is, made landfall downstate and kind of went off toward the northwest to northwest. It just barely meets that 50-mile criteria, but it was very impactful. Just kind of to define some of the impacts here in general. I know Dahlia wasn't quite in this 50-mile radius for Stark, and then Debbie wasn't either. But again, just kind of giving you an idea of some things as we look back in history. Now, since we're not going to have that formal update late Thursday, I want to make sure I got this in here because this is one of the biggest regular season high school football games here. We're in Stark, and this is one of the, if not maybe the biggest that I can remember in terms of a regular season high school football game taking place in Stark on Friday night with the Bradford Tornadoes, my school here, against the Mandarin Mustangs here. I mean, both teams unbeaten. Mandarin, in a higher classification, probably would think that they would be the team, to beat in this one. But you just never know here. I mean, both teams are very, very battle tested here. Both teams made, and unfortunately for our area, lost the state title games in their respective classes last year in Tallahassee. Of course, Mandarin's from Jacksonville. And this game's going to be in Stark. It's going to be streamed there on News 4 Jax Plus. There's going to be a whole broadcast centered around this. That seems to be their plan there, something they're doing this year. And it's their game of the week. I know, First Coast News, it's their game of the week. Hexa News Jax is sending a crew here. They're going to have live updates during their online streaming. So keep an eye on several games. I mean, the high school football world here in our area, it's going to be focused on Stark. Granted, we don't have weather causing problems Friday night here. That game Friday evening around 80 is what I'm expecting. It's the same number pretty much as last Friday here. It is what I have on here. It's the same as last week because there is some uncertainty with Francine. I'm hopeful that we'll get some more dry air in by that point and the rain chances end up dropping. But, the models are a little uncertain on it. We got lucky there. Game getting started there right around 7:30 last Friday, and hopefully don't have problems this Friday here. I'm cautiously optimistic that things will be all right, but you have a tropical system involved, and it's not something we can forecast very well that far out ahead. So, I mean, what a game that's going to be, in terms of the attention. We'll see what happens. I mean, some of the scores here, I mean, being in a higher class would dictate maybe Mandarin does win by double digits, but you just never know here. Bradford has had such a great stretch here. I mean, the only game they've lost here, the last couple years is a state title game to Cocoa. So anything could happen. And I think that quarterback's committed to Michigan, as I checked last. So I know Mandarin, their quarterback, who's injured, their starting quarterback committed to FSU. And then he's not going to be playing, but the receiver should be playing there. He's committed to Texas. And a player committed to the Texas Longhorns will be playing against Bradford County Friday night here in Stark. So, that's a big deal as we're looking at things. Again, Saturday possible, but the forecast is iffy right now here at this point, or around 80s, what I'm thinking. I know we could have not affecting this necessarily, but maybe another area of, tropical concern toward the Carolinas next week that could kind of lower some rain chances here, and depending on where it tracks next week. And then also, I'll be watching here, I'll be tracking, as we're monitoring things toward areas there, of course, in our region, to see how things are impacted. It could actually bring a little bit of a bit of cooler, dry air, but eventually in that next system here. But, as we get rid of the rain here we'll just kind of watch some of the different trends. There's some iffiness here, uncertainty in the forecast. When it's been an odd pattern of raininess here lately, and eventually we should kind of dry out. But we'll be tracking things here. Let's go ahead and move on to the covered area. Of course, we got to be careful here because you're thinking, well, the hurricane Francine is making landfall west of the area. I mean, when I say west, I mean it's making landfall in Louisiana here later now today. I mean, it's going to be 18 hours, a little less probably, making landfall in Louisiana there, New Orleans at the furthest east point, and probably just a little west of that based on the latest official forecast. That there is a concern with that, so you have to watch for wobbles and track shifts. But the point is, making landfall that far west, you don't think you're going to have an impact. But we've had storms out there make landfall and have impacts before. Granted, some of those are a little more disorganized that do it. I mean, this is a little more organized potentially, and that could, if we don't get enough dry area and train, could kind of make things a little bit, less severe for us in terms of our tornado threatened areas further west. But it's going to kind of depend here just on how things are. I mean, if it's a more organized system, it's going to take a little longer to unwind here, and that could be worse for those folks. And the damage potential could be significantly worse there. But the tornado threat might not really get going in much because things won't be, as spread out. But we'll just wait and see. I mean, I'm thinking of some systems in the past. I mean, we'll just have to kind of watch because I think at Denison 05, that made landfall further east, and then, well, you got that threat maybe in like Swanee County and the like. I mean, this made landfall there as we're looking toward, give or take, the western Florida Panhandle. I was really young when that happened, so I believe just off the top of my head, that was in the western Florida Panhandle. We got some of that tornado threat, somewhat east, but not enough. But we'll see. There's a chance it could stay, more like Panama City to Dothan, where the worst of the tornado threat is. We'll see, and that would be just west of our area. That's not out of the question here. Depending on how things kind of develop. This is an odd track, kind of. I know. Let's go back to our cyclone here real quick because, I mean, for a hurricane to develop there in the Bay of Campeche like this, I mean, now granted, all storms are different. This track's even different than that one was, but it kind of is reminiscent here. And I'll go ahead and let's see, where do we want to go with this? We want to go to our satellite. That's where we'll take you then. And, it's a little reminiscent of Adrian 57 in some ways because it's an odd track. It's not really, expect a hurricane to kind of come from and track. Quite honestly, I mean, over the years, I mean, we've had storms, obviously Katrina. I mean, that came from a way different direction. This is an unusual track here. Granted, this is nothing like Katrina. That's the good news, but it's still going to be impactful. I mean, we've had Ida, toward New Orleans, but that didn't come from this direction at all. We've had Laura that hit Lake Charles. That was a different path. I mean, so again, we even had, we got in Greek letters there in 2020. That was a bad storm there that hit New Orleans in 2020. I want to say it was Zeta, maybe. We had so many storms that year in 2020. It's hard to even remember the exact names, but we had a storm in the Greek alphabet that was really problematic for New Orleans. That was even worse than this one is expected to be at this point. Granted, you got to prepare for a track shift east, not out of the question, a category higher, and then that could get you a Cat 2 into New Orleans here. Right now, there's just a hurricane watch, so things can change in a hurry, and they've had bad hurricane luck over the years in New Orleans. But not expected to be, something that they have not dealt with before, like a Katrina or a major hurricane. So, that's kind of the storyline there. It's not expected to become a major hurricane, and hit New Orleans dead on. Right now it's supposed to be a Cat 1, high end Cat 1, and hit to the west a little, but still they're on the dirty side. And things, this little time to repair, a little more uncertain than you would like them, quite honestly, because the models keep wanting to shift to east in some ways. And New Orleans has so much more population density closer to the coast, and that's problematic. But also hadn't been to something like an Andrew we've been tracking for days and days for New Orleans purposes. Of course, they ended pretty quick towards South Florida, but it was something like around New Orleans they were keeping an eye on, but a little bit more so with the development of a system already there. This, got its head together here fairly quickly. I mean, it wasn't even a tropical cyclone until Monday, and now Cat 1 is hurricane heading Louisiana on your Wednesday. So let's go ahead and kind of pull up here the graphics for that 7-day locally, since we're not going to have one for late Thursday, since we're going to be in, watching tornado warning mode here for that Thursday, especially across our area. I mean, I kind of stretched out from late Wednesday and midday Friday, give or take. I mean, there's a chance, that could vary a little on Friday, whether if we have more instability, there could be a low at some point early and maybe a re-strengthening. But the focus is Thursday here with that. It would seem, based on the instability and the low pressure being, the most, overlapped in terms of the potential of danger, irritation, and, that's shear. And then we're talking about instability, CAPE. CAPE values, convective available potential energy. But 60% chance of rain on that Wednesday, 70 on Thursday, 60 on Friday. I mean, HFR model has been showing like squally weather, even, first coast region Thursday, but maybe not as much in the way of rotation potential. And you see a lower in of rain chances finally here, it would seem. Though, I mean, if something strange happened to the tropics, this could change. But right now, the anticipation is at 40-30% chances we get next week. And I'm optimistic for us. Maybe we'll get down to the upper 60s by next Tuesday morning. But that is dependent on some things. If we get some drier on the backside, maybe another system that we'll have to cover. Maybe Gordon, possibly over into Carolinas. Some of the models have been indicating that. So we'll have to just kind of watch here for that potential. I mean, as we look here, I mean, it could be a different name on that list depending on how things kind of evolve. But again, just something to kind of be mindful of here as we are at the peak of hurricane season. So again, just continue to track all this here for you. You can see here a Cat 1 hurricane right now. It definitely looks pretty nasty out there as we continue to give you the very latest. Let me go ahead and pull up the graphic I created here earlier on with our tornado risk. I just wanted to kind of emphasize that the highest zone of rotation risk, would be in the yellow color in general. Don't focus on the exact line. This is not, again, an official forecast. It's something I was looking at here with just the overlap, and it's kind of a broad brush here to what could happen, because for one, I wasn't sure if the SPC outlooks would be out in time here for an update, depending on how things kind of went. And I just wanted to kind of make it a little easier, because sometimes we can't get some of the day 2 stuff in as quick. I have day 1, but it didn't show the whole risk area here. So it just kind of gives you an idea of what could happen. And, things are subject to change, obviously, here as the situation does evolve on us. You definitely got to be just mindful of what's happening. And let me go ahead and see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers. I don't see any right now. But again, we're watching Francine very carefully. I'm watching Francine very carefully here in the Weather Center. It's all about keeping you guys safe out there with Francine. So again, just trying to keep you informed on the very latest here on Hurricane Francine. It seems to want to get its act together here. So we're just going to be paying attention across, the national picture, but also our 62 counties. And again, mainly Thursday, isolated tornadoes possible. Uncertainty remains. It's just subject to change, but just have multiple ways to receive alerts. That area in yellow is what we're watching, the most. I mean, Weather Service Storm Prediction Center is really focusing on like Tallahassee, and then maybe areas like Seminole County further west with the highest risk of this, but there's a margin risk that generally encompasses the area I have on the graphic here. So, and things could definitely get upgraded as things evolve. The threat evolves here. And again, this is the infrared satellite here of Francine, our Cat 1 hurricane on max sustained winds at 90 miles an hour here. 90 mile an hour max sustained winds as we're watching this hurricane. Definitely something to be mindful of. And I'll take this off real quick. I'll put the SBC tornado risk on. And you can see here that in the yellow, that yellow zone, let me go ahead and stop our loop of the lightning here. But in that yellow zone, that's where we have the greatest risk of tornadic activity. and we're going to be paying attention there. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. You can see areas in southeast, Louisiana around New Orleans. I mean, you're going to have Gulfport in there. You even have Hattiesburg on the edge. You have Mobile, Pensacola, Panama City, and even in our area, Apalachicola. More distinct tornado risk there, but even this is before 8 a.m. Eastern on that Thursday. South Choppy, overnight. You got to really watch Carabel, Wilma. Those are the areas that are overnight Wednesday before, you get out maybe and get out and about. Those are the areas I have to watch for tornado risk before that kind of spreads further over for that Thursday here. So I know you can kind of see things on radar with Francine here. This is kind of the composite view per se of all the radars together, but we're just watching things and tracking them here with Francine. And let's go ahead and pull up. I had this up earlier before we got on, but let's pull up where the hurricane warning is right now. It's in this reddish maroonish color, and you have areas like New Iberia in Louisiana under this. I mean, Vermilion Parish, Iberia Parish, St. Mary Parish, there, Assumption Parish, and maybe you guys watching in some of these areas here or close by, maybe, have evacuated from some of these zones even, but it's 1:18 in the morning as we're looking towards Central Time, and you see St. James Parish, Ascension, the Baton Rouge Parish is there. You kind of look Lafourche Parish there, Terrebonne. So you kind of get the idea. You see Morgan City and Houma. You see areas like Thibodeau. Just going to be watching here very carefully. That's where the hurricane conditions are most likely, and you see current winds aren't too high. But hurricane conditions most likely in this maroonish color here. I mean, so you see Vermilion Parish, some of those cities, we move it around, and you get the idea. Iberia Parish, Iberville Parish, toward Baton Rouge, Ascension Parish, Gonzales there. I mean, toward I-10, we have these different communities that could be impacted here. Even, Grand Isle right on the edge of this, technically no hurricane warning there. So definitely important to keep our eyes on as we track things. We're just going to continue to monitor the situation here. I mean, you see some gusts in the Gulf a little bit higher, 40s, 50s even on some of these sites there. So that kind of tells a weather story. But this is a hurricane warning. There are other warnings and watches, but I just wanted to kind of focus on this here as we're tracking the overall scenario, as we track Hurricane Francine, as things get closer, to impact there toward the Gulf Coast. So very important to track things. I know it's getting pretty late here, even out west in that time zone at this point, but again, we're tracking Francine, a hurricane. We've already had Beryl, a Cat 1 hit the U.S. this year, and we had Debbie, a Cat 1 hit parts of our area. This could be a Cat 2 at landfall. It's not out of the question here. It could just be a Cat 1, but tell that to the folks in Houston what just the Cat 1 is. It was very severe for them, Beryl, with a lot of fatalities there. I mean, he had to power out for a while in some cases. There's so many folks there without electricity, and I mean, our area, Debbie, was deadly as well. So you just got to be mindful. I mean, it wasn't as bad as Idalia, but Debbie was bad as well. Toward parts of our area, so parts of our 62 counties. I mean, we had tornadoes, we had fatalities there. Think of the young person that lost their life there. As we're looking closer to where the storm made landfall there around Fannin Springs. So again, you can kind of see here the hurricane, the colder cloud tops here on the infrared. Let me just see if we have anybody, any questions or comments here from any of the viewers at home. And I don't see any right now. We're probably about to round things on up. But of course, we're always on here as necessary. Facebook, KC Cloud, WX Cloud Weather, Twitter /X at Cloud KC, YouTube at Cloud Weather, Twitch Cloud Weather, and cloudweather.com. That website there has the very latest on things. So we're just going to continue to watch our system here. We're going to continue to watch Francine as things, deteriorate toward Louisiana on that Wednesday, on this September 11th here, 2024. So what I think I'm gonna do, I'm gonna leave this infrared satellite up as we're looking ahead for a bit as we kind of watch things, try to organize with this. And you'll continue to see that on the different streams here. May not keep it up a really long time, but just for a bit. And so already the stream going, you can kind of see the color cloud tops here. So we're not going to break back into the stream or anything like that, but we will keep the infrared satellite up here. I mean, as we're kind of watching this progression of the storm system, as it tries to organize, you don't have an unnecessarily really apparent, but it's still very dangerous looking. As you know, have all those storms, or even on the western side, which that's kind of interesting in some ways. But I mean, we're just gonna have to keep on tracking things here, see if that can kind of shift around. I mean, it generally does in these systems. You have the significant tornado parameter. I mean, you kind of look at that, and then you see where that is currently focused. Just real quick, I'll kind of do a little marking on this. I mean, you have some of this about 284 miles off toward the east-northeast of the center. So let's go ahead and, project this here. Now, things could vary with the state of this, but 284 miles east-northeast, that gets you to about Panama City, give or take, here at landfall point, and then you just kind of have to project things. I mean, that can get you just barely in the southwest Georgia eventually with this. Maybe just into our far western counties as we get there toward Thursday at sunrise when the sun's on Jackson. Maybe we have, some of those SCP values still showing up if it stays the same, which it won't exactly, but then, areas there like Blakely and the like with some of those higher SCP significant tornado parameter values with a rotation to be more likely, to be prevalent there and produce some isolated tornadic activity. So again, we'll just have to be tracking all this here for you. Again, gonna keep this on up. We have a hurricane heading closer toward the U.S. here, so make sure if you're in those areas and along the direct path that you charge your devices up and you have, multiple ways to get alerts, decide whether evacuation is necessary. Storm surge can be an issue there. For our local viewers, and especially the area I was showing you guys, generally west of the I-75 corridor, give or take, that's the area where the tornado threat to be the highest, so make sure you have multiple ways to get alerts, especially on Thursday. That can vary a little bit, but that's generally the area where we're going to be watching the greatest tornado risk here. And we'll break in as needed. And when there's any tornado warning storm, as we've done for almost 5 years, they'll be on for our 62 counties. They're going to be on for landfall. This hurricane as well, the third, continental U.S. landfall and hurricane in 2024 so far. The hurricane season hadn't been maybe as active as some of the forecasts said, but that's still significant to have 3 landfalling U.S. hurricanes, whether they're major hurricanes or not. Cat 1 and still be, and it has already been in both cases before deadly here, and this will probably be deadly as well. I mean, Beryl is very significant toward, Texas and then even in the Caribbean as well. I'd probably get retired. Debbie probably won't get retired, but it was still, a storm that was deadly in our viewing circle, not just one fatality either, a handful of fatalities there, which is just tragic, and thoughts and prayers got everybody impacted here, by our systems and the fatalities that occur because of fallen trees and the like. And I mean, I will say that, one thing you could think about, they've already had Ida and the like action. It might be a little bit harder for stuff to be as vulnerable because Houston, really, even though they had Harvey with the rain, they hadn't had a wind event since Ike and 08 in Houston. They have had storms like Ida there going back, Zeta there, I believe it was, going back here in just the last handful of years. So, for New Orleans proper, it might be a little harder for as many trees to fall and, cause injuries and fatalities, but some probably will still fall and some probably will still be very tragic situation for folks. And mobile homes, of course, the storm surge, got to be mindful of that. You got to watch out for tornado threat, the inland flooding threat here as well, like you always do, as all systems are different, so keep that in mind as we're looking at things here with Hurricane Francine. I mean, we talk about how, Beryl was quite a bit worse than Debbie for the areas and looking in the U.S., but in a more population density, they have this well further east. They're gonna have problems in New Orleans, and still, even though it wasn't that populated in our viewing area, right where this made landfall at Debbie back in August, we still had fatalities. So people probably, still lose their life with this. We've got to be really staying safe. This is still a serious situation, and this is why we have the logo red. Anytime a hurricane hits the U.S., it's a serious situation, whether it's a minimal Cat 1 or something much worse. And this is not going to be just a minimal 75-mile-an-hour storm here. Could see a Cat 1, but it's still a big deal. Even tropical storms, a lot of times are deadly in the U.S., and it's going to be a tropical storm in the ward areas, around Jackson, Mississippi there Thursday. So stay weather aware. We'll be here as needed. We're in alert mode here for local and for national with Hurricane Francine here, folks. And for what it's worth, if you want to watch this back, I know we're going to keep this going for a little while, so make sure you go to YouTube at Cloud Weather if you want to watch it back. Why it's still streaming, because you can't, have DVR functionality. It's not available on Facebook, and the like. But on YouTube at Cloud Weather, it is available. That link's on Twitter/X as well. So make sure you go over there if you want to watch this back, because the rest of this is going to be an infrared satellite kind of running here for a while as our storm system Francine organizes and is a potential problem here. Even towards some areas, tornadoes, but definitely a problem towards Louisiana. Have a great night. Stay safe. As staying secure right here with Francine. I'll be back here as needed, of course, with landfall coverage here later on that Wednesday here, and then for local concerns, basically on that Thursday. It would seem with some isolated tornadoes, a possibility that northeastern quadrant's a concern, but even just the eastern side of this, definitely something to watch here, and we'll be on top of it to protect and inform at least you, your friends, and your family.